Hi, this is Matt from filmformat.com, and in this video we'll be comparing the Panasonic GH4 with the Sony A7S Mark II. I have equally as much respect for the Sony A7S Mark II as I do for the Panasonic GH4, and I'm curious to see if it's worth all that extra money. Let's see if it's worth dropping everything and buying a Sony A7S Mark II. Luckily, a buddy of mine rented a Sony A7S Mark II for a day shoot, and he was generous enough to let me test it out the night before. It was always something I wanted to compare with my GH4 and see if I had fallen in love with the right camera. I love my GH4 and it has served me very well on many shoots, but the enticing new features of the Sony A7S Mark II has me questioning whether I need to switch cameras. The Sony A7S Mark II is a brilliant mirrorless camera that competes with some of the best professional video cameras out on the market. Its Sony E-mount is easy to adapt a variety of lenses. Its main selling point though is its ability to shoot in low light situations. Normally I shoot in well lit locations with the GH4, which is where it performs best. But the ability to shoot in dimly lit rooms may be the best reason to switch cameras in my opinion. That's why I wanted to perform a quick test between the two cameras, shooting in low light, and compare the differences between their ISO settings. I already know the winner of this test, but I was curious to see how drastic of a difference there was in image quality. Before I even started filming though, I noticed how hard it was to navigate through the Sony menu. It was nothing like my GH4, which is incredibly intuitive and built almost perfectly for my hands. Granted, I've had much more experience using my GH4, but it was far easier to navigate through its menu without the aid of guides. I had to use a guide just to find out how to switch between different ISO settings on the Sony A7S Mark II. That's not something I want to be fiddling with on a shoot. Also, by the time I was ready to hit record, the battery life had already been drained down to 12% after having started with a fully charged battery. Luckily, I had 2 extra batteries with me, but I was very unimpressed with the A7S Mark II's battery life. By comparison, I have 3 batteries for my GH4, and those will last an entire day of continuous shooting with extra power to spare. The Sony A7S Mark II lasts about an hour recording 4K video on one battery, while a single battery for the Panasonic GH4 lasts about 2.5 hours. After we get beyond those hiccups, it's incredible to see the image difference between the two cameras in low light. I'm afraid to shoot anything above even 200 ISO on the GH4, and it's clear to see why. The grain becomes immediately apparent, whereas on the Sony A7S Mark II, it holds up in image quality every step of the way. For now, I'm going to hold out until the GH5 makes its debut next year, but if there's no significant improvement in its low light capabilities, then I may have to reconsider buying the Sony A7S Mark II. If you're interested in a more in-depth written review about the comparisons between the Panasonic GH4 and Sony A7S Mark II, then feel free to click on this button. And as always, feel free to subscribe and visit filmformat.com for more filmmaking reviews and tutorials from yours truly. Thanks for watching.